Hey everyone, it's March 3rd, 2025, and this is the Videntis podcast, your one-stop shop for all things news.
You got it.
Today, we're going to be diving deep,
Yeah.
into President Trump's second term.
Yes.
There's three big stories. I mean, everyone is buzzing about these.
It's it's a wild time.
Buckle up, let's go.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is how these stories, they might seem separate at first, but they're all kind of tied together, right?
They are, yeah.
They show just how complicated everything is in politics these days.
So true. Okay, so first up, there's this NPR, PBS News Marist poll causing a bit of a stir. A lot of Americans are feeling a little iffy about the direction of the country.
Yeah, I can see why.
Not exactly, sunshine and roses.
Well, you gotta think about all the policy changes. The Trump administration's been moving fast. Like, remember Project 2025, that big plan from the Heritage Foundation?
Oh, yeah, the one to really shake things up.
Right, a lot of these changes are right out of that playbook.
Oh, how does that connect to how people are feeling? I mean,
Well, when things change so fast, it's natural to feel a little uneasy.
yeah, makes sense.
And then you look at the poll numbers, there's a whopping 90-point gap between Republicans and Democrats on if they approve of how Trump's doing. His overall approval rating is 45%, but that gap, man, that really tells you something about where we are politically.
90 points, that's like a whole football field of disagreement.
Yeah.
Are we talking unprecedented levels of division here?
It's definitely a stark contrast, yeah. But we've seen big differences in approval ratings before, especially when American society is going through big changes.
Oh, sure.
Like, think about the Civil Rights era, the Vietnam War.
Right, big turning points.
Exactly. Tons of social and political upheaval, and, well, people were really divided.
And speaking of turning points, tomorrow night, President Trump gives his first address to Congress since he started his second term. Not technically a State of the Union, but still a big deal. 9 p.m. Eastern Time.
Huge opportunity for him, right?
Yeah.
He can lay out what he wants to do for the next 4 years.
Especially with everyone feeling so anxious, like that poll showed.
For sure. We can expect him to hit on immigration, foreign policy, the economy, and I bet he'll tie it all back to Project 2025 pretty closely.
Oh yeah, the Project 2025 echo chamber. So how much weight does an address like this actually have?
Yeah.
Can it really change people's minds? Or is it more about, firing up his base?
Good question. I doubt it'll cause a huge swing in public opinion, but it's a powerful platform for him. It's a chance to get his supporters really energized and really solidify his agenda.
Right, a rallying cry.
Exactly. But, it's also a chance for him to say, hey, I hear your concerns.
Yeah,
Maybe try to bridge that gap between the parties that we were just talking about.
right. Address the elephant in the room. Or should I say, the donkey.
Haha.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit, talk about something more international.
Yeah.
That meeting in the Oval Office, President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky, February 28th. Things got a little heated there, didn't they?
Oh, definitely. The biggest issue was the war in Ukraine, with Russia. And how much the U.S. is supporting Ukraine. I mean, we've seen these two leaders disagree before, but this meeting, it definitely turned the heat up a notch. Zelensky seems to be pushing for a more equal relationship with the U.S. He keeps talking about wanting equal dialogue.
Equal dialogue. But from what I've read, it seems like President Trump was more about, laying down the law.
Oh, yeah.
Even hinting that he'd pull back aid if he didn't get a deal on his terms. Like it's his way or the highway.
Exactly. And then you have Vice President J.D. Vance side in with Trump, even criticizing Zelensky right there in the meeting.
Oh, wow.
Shows they're on the same page, right?
Wow.
Could be a sign of a bigger shift in U.S. foreign policy.
So what happens if the U.S. actually does pull back support from Ukraine? What are we talking about, global consequences-wise?
That's the big question, right? The consequences could be enormous. It's not just about the money either. It's about sending a message to the world about America and how committed we are to our allies, to standing up to aggression. If we back down, other countries who are in tough spots might start thinking twice about relying on the U.S.
You're right. It's not just about the money. It's about the message. It makes you wonder, is this part of some bigger plan? A move towards America first and isolationism, like what we saw during Trump's first term?
That's definitely a theory that's getting some attention. People are pointing back to that America first rhetoric,
Yeah.
from his campaigns. But it's hard to say for sure. We'll have to wait and see what happens in the next few months if this keeps up.
So we've got people feeling anxious, a president pushing a bold agenda, international tensions. Feels like a pot about to boil over.
Absolutely. And the crazy thing is how connected it all is. What happens in Washington, it doesn't stay there. It has a ripple effect across the world.
Right.
Impacts everything: economic stability, national security.
And speaking of the economy, it's like we're getting mixed signals there, too. On the one hand, Trump's been putting tariffs on stuff from Canada, Mexico, China, but then he pauses those tariffs on Mexico because they're helping out with immigration and drug trafficking.
Yeah.
It's like tariff Tetris or something.
Yeah, and it might seem contradictory, but it's all part of this complicated dance, right? International trade, diplomacy. It's like Trump's using those tariffs to try and get what he wants. On other issues, will it work? Who knows?
It's interesting, though, that with all this stuff happening globally, the poll shows Americans really want him to focus on stuff here at home. The economy, immigration. Seems like a disconnect between what the administration cares about and what people are actually worried about.
Oh, for sure. And that gap can be really frustrating for people who feel like no one's listening to them. It's a good reminder that being a good leader isn't just about doing stuff, but understanding what people need and actually putting those needs first.
So let's go back to that address to Congress for a minute. What are you going to be listening for? What are the clues that will tell us where Trump's headed in this second term?
Well, first I'll be paying attention to his tone. Does he sound like he wants to bring people together,
Yeah.
address those concerns that we saw in the poll? Or does he go back to that divisive way of talking that was so common in his first term?
Yeah, the tone police will be out in full force.
For sure. But beyond that, I'm listening for specific plans, especially on the economy, immigration, what people are saying they care about. Will he give us actual plans to deal with inflation, create jobs, change immigration policies? Or is it just going to be more vague promises?
And I bet those proposals will be straight out of Project 2025, right?
Yeah.
It's like his playbook.
Probably. But it's important to remember where Project 2025 comes from. The Heritage Foundation, that conservative think tank. Their whole vision for the government is way different from what we have now. If they get their way, we're talking huge changes everywhere.
So we got to look past the surface, understand what's really driving the policies.
Exactly. Can't take things at face value. We have to dig deeper, figure out what's motivating these decisions, what the real goals are.
Before we move on, I want to touch on something else that's been in the news. The U.S. may be pulling out of the World Health Organization. That was one of Trump's first big moves in his second term.
Yeah, that was controversial, to say the least. Some people say the WHO is ineffective, biased against the U.S. Others are worried that leaving will hurt global health security.
Just adds another layer of complexity to all this international stuff, doesn't it?
For sure. And it makes you wonder about America's place in the world. Are we stepping back as a global leader by leaving organizations like this?
And what message does that send to everyone else? Our allies, our adversaries. It's something to think about. Man, we've covered a lot of ground today. From everyone feeling kind of unsure to a president pushing a bold agenda and all those international tensions, it's clear Trump's second term is going to be a wild ride.
Definitely keeps things interesting, that's for sure. It also shows how important it is to stay informed, to really pay attention. The stuff happening in Washington, here and around the world, it affects all of us, It's important to understand what's going on and what it all could mean.
Absolutely. We can't just sit back and watch it happen.
Yeah.
We got to be involved to help shape things.
Exactly. And that starts by asking the tough questions, challenging what we think we know and trying to see things from different points of view. It's easy to get stuck in our own little bubbles where everyone agrees with us. But to really move forward, we got to step outside our comfort zones and actually talk to people who see things differently.
Such a good point. It's easy to get lost in all the back and forth, the us versus them, and forget what really matters. We're all in this together, right? Finding common ground, that's how we can make progress.
And that's where a show like this comes in. We're trying to give you the information you need to make smart decisions, to have good conversations about the stuff that really matters.
Exactly. We're not just here to tell you the news. We want you to understand why it's happening, what it all means. We want you to walk away from this deep dive feeling informed and ready to engage with the world around you.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So as we wrap things up today, I want to leave you with something to think about. With all this uncertainty we've talked about, people's doubts, the chance of big policy changes, and all those international tensions simmering, what do you think is the biggest issue facing the U.S. right now, and why?
Yeah, think about that as you go about your day. Talk about it with your friends, family. Let us know what you think. Who knows, we might even share some of your answers on a future episode.
And remember, staying informed isn't a one-time thing. The news keeps coming, but we'll be here to help you make sense of it all. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay informed.